everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And thanks for being here with us this evening. I feel like this summer we've been doing, some every other week shows, but I guess we were here last week, weren't we?
Yeah, we were here last week.
Yeah, so we have some fun updates, I guess, to bring you this evening and some fun things coming up for us. So I guess stay tuned for some of our fun events coming up. But as far as fishing, I guess I have to say that, we always start with the report. Yeah, we actually have not been on the water. But the one thing that I can tell you is that
Hey, James.
Conditions have remained consistent, but like consistently crappy. And I guess not totally and not all around. But the one thing that I can tell you is that our systems and our weather patterns have been ever changing. And so at least where we are in this part of Wisconsin, there has not been like several days of sun or anything. We've had a lot of wind and a lot of little rain patterns and clouds and especially smoke that have been passing through. And it's amazing how much that has been affecting our weather, but like the temperatures. So when we look at the weather as it comes up, that in part gives us some clues about what the water temperatures are going to be, at least in part. And I just feel like we in this part of Wisconsin haven't gotten some of those warm temperatures that down south is starting to see. And so this is a really interesting time of the year because as we look across, I almost said the ice belt, as if it was ice season. It's not. As we look across the Midwest, because it's hard to project too far, right? But there are people who are in varying stages of the spawn. So when I talk about spawn, I'm meaning panfish at this point. And so many of these fish are pushing to the shallows for different reasons. So like we said, the panfish, the bluegills, and the crappies, they are getting their spawn done. But a lot of times we're finding, bass come to spawn later on, I guess. But the perch come, and I think they're eating eggs and all that kind of stuff. But this time of the year, it's interesting to see where everyone is at in these patterns because it does vary so greatly.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell it's a pretty stark line. We went south to go visit some family last week, and you can kind of see the signs of summer coming. There was turtles nesting on sides of roads, and there was snakes out, and there was different plants were flowering, and being a natural resource professional, it's like, oh, that's blooming down here and it's not blooming at my house. And so you kind of notice all those things. And there's kind of a line like Highway 29 seems for us over here in Wisconsin seems to be that line right now where summer is kind of south of it and we're still stuck in spring. So up here in north of 29. So we're still, I would imagine we're still fishing some of that spring pattern up here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about tonight about like.
Wait, don't move on yet.
Oh,
because I think James is making a good point that's relevant here. He said that it's hit and miss right now, depending on where you're at. And I think that's a good point location wise, like north and south in Wisconsin and all that. But I think also lake to lake, because when we're talking about these weather patterns that aren't just sun, right? When we have a lot of sun, that warms up these lakes and really gets things going kind of wherever you're at, right? But when you have these inconsistent patterns, you have some of these lakes that are warming up faster or I guess sometimes slower than the others. So, we 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, went to a lake that we were so sure was going to have a great pattern. Like we knew what was going on. And I think based on the water temperatures I went, it was a little smidge early in the year. And so that was really interesting because that's not what I expected. But I don't know if that had to do with the water clarity there and how it was absorbing the sun or warming up. But I think especially within your region, within your home region, there are lakes that that are going to warm up faster than others. And one of the fun things that we do this time of year, I guess I call it fun, but I also hate it as we move on because what we do is we fish by the lakes that get super weedy. And so as we go into the summer, and it gets a pain to fish in those places, wherever that is, we all have those lakes, but there's fish there and sometimes good fish. This early season, if you're still in that early season, this is kind of when to hit that before those weeds are totally growing up. And so just kind of a fun way to target those different patterns and, those lakes where the water's warming up and then or I was going to say the opposite, where the weeds are growing is where it's warming up. And
Mhm.
so when those lakes get too weedy, you bounce right back to those other lakes that you haven't been to yet. And I don't know, I think that extends that bite in that season.
Yeah, I think you're right. Brent's saying, can we put two nice days in a row together? Like that's how we feel over here. Like it seems like if you don't get out on the one nice day in the week, like you're gonna go brave some elements, whether that's wind, fire, rain. It's been kind of a rough spring so far. Lee's saying that it's been 87 and dry by him. Lakes are super low. I would say that our lakes are pretty. I don't think they're high by any means, but they're not low. I think we're sitting at pretty normal stuff around here. But they're still a little chilly for what I would figure. June 12th. I just feel like usually this is going into that summer transition for us where like fish are starting to get like hard to pin down because there's some weed growth and some are still spawning and some are out like relaxing after the spawn, and so it can be a really tough time of year to fish if you're not fishing beds, and so and so I think that's kind of where we're at here. So yeah, just keep letting us know where you're at. Just throw that stuff in the comments. We like to hear what your temps are, what your water conditions are like, because it brings up good conversation. And if you guys have questions at any point during the show, just let us know in the comments and we will get to it.
Well, and I think we can give people maybe a little bit of confidence, because even though the weather has been so hit and miss, for those of you that don't know, I work over at Fitante Taxidermy here in Anago. And so quite a few fish this week being brought in for mount. So a lot of them are replicas. A lot of people are throwing fish back, and that is super, super awesome. But I would say as far as earlier in the month and the end of last month, things are really starting to pick up for people. So whether it's here or whether it's not, I think things are going to be heading in a good direction, and we're definitely looking forward to that.
So I think what I titled this show, besides we're waiting on Troy. He had, if you didn't know, he had some major back surgery earlier this month, and he was so kind to like say, yeah, I'd love to be on.
Well, here's how this story went, because we kind of wanted to talk about like Euro tackle and some of these things.
Yeah.
So we reached out to some teammates. He happened to be one of them, but Josh came home one day, because sometimes I set a podcast, sometimes he does. I guess lately you have been, but you're like, hey, I booked Troy Peterson. And I was like, did he just have back surgery? And so, I guess he was excited to be here, but he's not here yet. And so we're hanging tight. We're not ragging on him because he's got a lot going on.
He's got a lot.
He might pop in, and we don't know that yet. Otherwise, we will reschedule, because we are going to talk to him. I know we are excited about that.
Yeah, but in the description of the show, I did talk about fishing different, non-traditional tactics for bluegills, and I think that for me, what I think of when I think non-traditional is some of the stuff that's not soft plastics and some of the stuff that's not live bait. And you don't see a lot of people fishing that way. Once in a while you run into a guy or two that's fly fishing for bluegills. We've done that a little bit. With two people in the boat, it can get kind of sketchy whipping that line around. So we don't do that a whole lot, but that's a fun way to catch bluegills, especially this time of year, when Emily's talking about some of these shallower lakes with a lot that get really weedy during the summer. This is a great time to go out and fish those lakes, especially with, some topwater flies. You could even probably do some like suspending streamers, some stuff like that. But what I kind of wanted to touch on tonight was like Euro tackle. And if you're not familiar with the company, they specialize in finesse baits. And so I'll pull up the webpage here in a second. But I think that when we start a conversation about hard baits, panfish get left out a lot, and that can include crappies, but in the recent years, I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like hard baits have been brought up in crappie conversations just a little bit, a lot. We talked with our friend Kyle Tyree, and he fishes, small jerk baits. I know I've seen it on Wired to Fish once in a while. But you never hear about it for bluegills. And I really do think that it goes without saying, some of those bigger bluegills, you talk about the 9+, 10+ inch bluegills, they eat minnows, right? And so they may not hit all the time a 4-inch bait. Once in a while, who hasn't caught a bluegill eating a bait that's almost as
Way
big
too
as
big for
itself?
it. Yeah.
But I do think that there is a time and a place and a space in your tackle box for stuff, hard bait specifically meant for panfish.
Well, and I think one of the other things that we hear a lot about is when people are fishing for different species. So when we talk to bass fishermen, and they're always out there throwing things like hard baits or these other profiles that aren't like panfishy, right? Typically, and then all of a sudden they're catching all these like trash panfish and throwing them back. Like, oh, this big crappie, get that out of here, right? And I think that is so funny, right? Because that is one of those keys that lets you know that these fish are responding to those presentations. Now, when you can hone in on this, and I think that's why Eurotackle comes up in this conversation, is because they have so many of these hard baits, these profiles that maybe you even recognize, but they can so easily be applied to panfish.
Yeah, so I guess where I kind of wanted to start out with here is, I think one that may not get enough attention overall. I know I don't give it enough attention, but especially when we're talking about alternative ways to catch bluegills specifically, I really think the popper in 1 and 3/4 of an inch. That's not even 2 inches. It's 1 and 3/4 of an inch. I think this is something that you could really use for targeting big bluegills that are, staging outside of beds. Some of those bigger, aggressive fish that are looking for food after they spawn. And I really think that this would be a great example of that. And I just
What I think of is actually almost the total opposite, but I love that. Is that summer pattern, when you really have fish that have moved out of the shallows. And so I love that because that is more than one season. Anytime you have a bait that's not just for one season, one thing, one time, one use, you want it more than that, right? And so these poppers, one of the things I think of is summer. And so when those fish have pushed all the way out, and we have started finding some really great crappies. Okay, here's where you look, is those deep
the deep
brush piles, like tree
deep
drops,
structure.
like deep structure, but like big structure. And so midsummer, and then what we've been doing is bobbers, right? And I've had a lot of success with like a leach plastic, but you have to set it so super shallow, right? And so instead of having a very shallow bobber setup, we can be using poppers, having all these different color options. But sometimes over the top of these tree drops, that's where these crappies are suspending. And I think a lot of times people will hear the splashes and they'll be like, oh, it's bass out there. It's so easy to disregard that. But when you stop and you kind of target what's going on there, we have been finding some really great crappies mixed in.
Yeah, I really think that you're hitting it right on the head there, especially in the area surrounding those deep structures, whether that's a tree drop or a fish crib or a rock pile. Those are things that attract bait fish, and that's what's going on is during certain times of the day, those bigger panfish will push the bait to the top, and so they're chasing fish to the top, and then they scatter and they get a couple, and they kind of, it's similar to bass, like you said, and that's what everybody's first mind goes to. Oh, it's splashing around, it's probably a bass.
Why do people think that? That's
well,
funny.
I mean,
don't know,
just
but
because,
I
like,
do that.
yeah, I think it's just that
It's like nature or
yeah.
something. I don't know.
But even big bluegills will be out there with those big crappies, and I really think that would be another good application for a popper like
Shows a
this.
different color. I love that color, but I'm not sure.
There's a bluegill. Fire tiger is always a good one, or the perch. Yeah, but there's this is a cool one, especially if you're fishing dark water. It gives you that good contrast between the lighter sky through the water, and it gives that really nice silhouette. I have that color in a few different baits, and honestly, I don't have any of these poppers, and that's why I said I don't give them. I really need to. This is an episode as much for you as it is for me, because this is a way for me to talk myself into spending a bunch of money with Euro tackle. So so now so you were just talking about that bite, top water, outside deep water. This is another one of those baits that might excel at that in that realm too. So this is the suspending crankbait. It's 2 inches, guys. 2 inches. A lot of us fish with twister tails that are bigger than this. So I mean, this is stuff that you can throw, and these options, not only are they really great for panfish, fishing the big aggressive bluegills or some of those crappies, but on those cold front days, or days when something turnover or something where it has the fish kind of like turned off, this might be a big fish bait, walleyes, bass, pike, just because it's a smaller profile. If you like to throw crankbaits and stuff all the time, and you just have those days where you're not getting anything, it might be just because your bait's too big. And so this would be an easy way to just like bring it that next step down. And they have a bunch of great colors in this too. Oh, that's a cool one.
That's actually a great example for what I was just thinking. And so you gave a whole bunch of great examples of when this would be used. But when I pull this out is especially those days where you are throwing like a twister tail or something like that, and all of the tails are just getting bit off. Maybe those are short strikes. Maybe those are smaller fish. You never quite know exactly what that situation is. But this is a bait where you're not going to be replacing those tails constantly, but you're not going to be losing that action. And that's also really great because if it is a situation where it is smaller fish, they can still swim after and attack that bait, and they're not going to hold you up, but that might drag the attention or draw the attention, I guess, of those bigger fish. Nothing draws attention like attention, right? Or what's the saying? Nothing draws a crowd like a crowd. But I think that's true for fish, right? Because especially in winter, I know we're not fishing suspended fish here, right? But think of winter when you have a whole school of fish under you, you want to keep them occupied, right? And we always joke, like sometimes we drill holes kind of close. We both try to keep baits down there to keep the school active and in that area. Well, when you have feeding fish, maybe it's a rock pile, whatever, they might be in that area, but if you can draw them in towards your baits, towards where you're fishing, that's going to help you connect with more fish.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Gene, how's it going? Yeah, you bring up some good points there. And a lot of these baits are applicable to what you just said, Okay.
There's a lot of old favorites here. And so that's the thing is like, how much do we talk about some of these things that And I guess something that I'll throw out there, because the different vibers, right? The Z Viber and the Z Viber Micro, all of these, we know them as winter baits, right? We put them, whatever, ice fishing, walleyes, panfish, whatever, put those under bobbers. People, like, this is a perfect time of the year to make sure when we're talking about this tackle that is cross seasonal, make sure that you're not putting away all of your ice plastics or your ice baits. I mean, these aren't even plastics. These are mini hard baits, right? And so the thing about them is whether you're using the tungsten or not, both sizes of these baits are going to be perfect for right under your bobber. And it's going to be that tiny little minnow profile. When we talk about match the hatch, this is that part of the season where this is going to match what's hatching. The color that you choose is, I guess, up to you and the lake, but there's a lot of different options here to make that possible for you.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there.
You could even put plastic on into that little hook. You don't have to.
Bobbers aren't just for sitting still. What I think of a bobber is it's more like
a float.
Setting your bait in the strike zone for the maximum amount of time that you can. So whether that's around docks, or whether that's in 20 feet of water or suspended over a big tree drop that comes up 15 feet off the bottom, or you can adjust your slip bobbers like that, and you can keep these baits right where the fish are. And I think a lot of times that really is overlooked. Bobbers seem to be thought of as a static tactic for fishing, but they're really not. Like, I rarely just throw a bobber out and just let it sit there. unless we are pitching baits, like that would be a great option. Maybe even one of these you could use, like one of the bigger, like the 1/8 ounce
You would do that?
Z Viber, and just let it sit out there.
I would not.
Or the Z Darter. This is one of my favorite baits to throw under a float, just because it's a great minnow shape for one. It's a very compact bait, and it moves a lot. And so, popping it on a slack line with the float there, and you let it sink, even though it's kind of fast, it does like a big sweep, or it does a dart, and then it comes back. And I really think that allowing it to just like do that and then sit there almost makes it like a suspending jerk bait that you can control where the maximum depth is. So this is one that I really enjoy throwing under a float. Hey Barb. So this is, just don't think of these as like them in their traditional sense, right? That's what this whole show is about. It's just like thinking out of the box. How can you utilize your tackle year round? How can you utilize your tackle for different types of fish that maybe you wouldn't be targeting? Because a lot of times, like I said, you think hard baits and you automatically go to crappies. But I started out this show by saying, like, these are tactics that we catch bluegills on.
Well, and this is an important time of the year to be talking about this, because, it's cool if you can let the panfish spawn and whatever, but especially as they push out and they're starting to feed, they're setting up for summer patterns. That is the point in the year where fish have seen a billion of the same bait go past their face 100 times, and so they get really sick of the things that they see go by constantly, the same presentation, the same worm, the same everything. You can't tell me that the fish are not learning those patterns, right? I don't know, maybe. But the nice thing is when you can switch it up, when you can provide something that is, a different action, or I don't know, if it's a hard bait, if it has, like a noise to it, if it's something that's attention grabbing, there's all these different aspects that are going to help you, hone in on that bite, because it's hopefully novel to those fish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm going to jump ahead and let the cat out of the bag a little bit. We are also here talking about this because not this weekend, but next weekend, we are going to be talking Euro tackle of all kinds, because we get to go to, is it the St. Croix Customer Appreciation Event? Is that what they call it?
Yep.
A summer fun event that they have going on. So I know that we are going to post more information about that, and I'm sure that's on their Facebook page. But if you are looking to talk about some of these baits, some of these things, we are going to be doing that here tonight, and a lot more to come. So you've kind of moved the screen on, and we have more to talk about here. So where do we start?
Well, I just wanted to put in there, Customer Appreciation Event is at the St. Croix Rod Factory Distribution Center in Park Falls, Wisconsin. It's on June 21st, which is a Saturday. We're gonna be at the Euro tackle table, but there's gonna be there. I think there's seminars. There's the other guides and other professionals there, sitting there chatting. I know last time we went a few years ago just to check it out, they were spinning rods outside, so you can see the process of how that goes on. They had a few other things going on, so it should be a pretty cool event. We're going to be there talking about Euro tackle, and now we touched on a little bit of the unconventional stuff. So this is the more conventional panfish.
Conventional for us. I guess there's a lot of people that don't fish this way.
Well, right. No, that's true. And also I feel like Euro tackle is really thought outside of the box with a lot of their profiles. I think they're non-traditional profiles. There's some out there that are like it, but these just seem to have a little bit of flair.
It spans the range of what you're looking for plastics. So if it is a bug profile, and if it is a minnow profile, or we have like the craw patterns and all of that. So there is kind of something for no matter what lake you're fishing. I know we have some that even prefer that bug pattern way into spring, way into summer, sometimes even in fall. So I'm going to have to mix some of that into my tackle.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to know about your bodies of water that you fish. Is it is the primary forage a minnow forage where there's some sort of transition that happens later in the summer where it turns from a bug bite into a fish bite, or does it stay a bug bite because that's the primary forage of the lake? Because like Emily said, we have some bodies of water around the house are primarily just bug bites all year round. There is small fish in there, right? Because the bluegills breed and the perch breed and everything has little baby fish. It just seems like everything mainly feeds on insects on those lakes. So having a diverse portfolio of profiles, I guess if you could say, of different bug shapes can help you match the hatch. And really all you need to do is just look around and see what's flying around, because a lot of times you can get good hints as to what's hatching right now. So like this one, people might not know this, but this is a dragonfly larva. So this is right now is a great time of year to be fishing this type of profile, just because the dragonflies have started to hatch, and so these little guys will be starting, floating up to the top and then hatching out, and that's exactly when fish are hitting them. So this is a great one this time of year, at least for around here. And the stone flies, they hatch pretty early, along with mayflies, but this profile could mimic both. That would be a good one to throw early season, even into summer a little bit. And and then there's the little minnow profiles, hellgrammites. That's a staple. We have a couple baits that we pour that are like that, but they're not this detailed. This has a lot more
that
detailed.
Size. To have a bug that's the 1.8.
That's true.
I think that's honestly so important.
Yeah, and then you have the little minnow profiles, and then you have some of these smaller.
Oh, Chris Rainey, hey.
Hey, Chris. And then you have some of the smaller profiles that might be thought of as like winter profiles, but you tend to throw a lot of these size baits. Why do you do that?
I? Okay, I feel like in my history I have been throwing a lot of like 1 inch and like buggy type baits, but I don't know if it's the lakes that we're fishing lately or I don't know what, but I've been upsizing lately, and even this past winter. So when we're talking about that hellgrammite and I pointed out it's a 1.8, it's because that's something I am actually a little bit excited about. I mean, I think a lot of those bug sizes, when you talk about a bug, I mean, some of them do start small. They grow up a little bit, just like minnows. When we're talking about a 1, a 1.5, that might be in the same range of what a fish is going to eat, right? But I think I've just been finding some good luck with using that larger end of that spectrum, that larger bug size. And I'm finding that honestly, a lot of times the small fish are even still biting onto my presentation. And so sometimes we use that slightly larger bait to avoid those baby fish. But I'm going to be honest with you, I don't feel like I'm cutting down on the bites. I'm just adding to the top end.
Right. And that's important. I think for me, I would not feel comfortable going out with just one size bait, because a lot of times, I like to throw bigger baits and it doesn't work.
Okay, but wait. So if you go back up to that, this is a perfect example. I keep talking about it. That 1.8 hellgrammite. Click on that really quick.
Okay.
So that's what I keep referring to. And you're like, I would never go out with a one size bait. Yes, I would, because here's why. Well,
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Why?
Make your argument.
It's because this is a bait that you can pinch in half, pinch in a quarter, pinch in whatever parts you want. And a bait like this has so many different little legs that you can start and use it as is, the 1.8 inch hellgrammite. Fine, cool. You can cut that body in half, and then you have a 1 inch leggy critter that fish are still going to eat just the same. And so I love baits like this that have all these different things that are going on, because it doesn't have to be just this giant bait as is. You can use this however you like.
That's true. And you bring up a good point. If you are new to fishing plastics, or if you have started fishing plastics and you're getting discouraged, one important thing that I really think that people should think about is that plastics are also not just the plastic, right? It's not a hard bait. These are easily modifiable. This is why I keep like a scissors or a knife in my tackle box, because all of these all of these little legs right here, you could take, if you were having a tough bite, or maybe it switched to a minnow bite, you could cut off a lot of these legs on both sides.
Pick them off.
leave like these two sections back here. This is what I would do. If you were catching on bugs and then it stopped, I would just take all these off and leave the last two and just leave the middle part. And now all of a sudden you're very close to a minnow profile.
To be honest, yeah.
So that, and that also reduces the size, the when you're fishing it horizontally, it has a big profile, and that really reduces that profile. So even if it is still buggy, they just shut down a little bit. That will reduce the bulkiness of that bait, and maybe that'll turn stuff on. But you could take these legs off. You could take all the legs off, and then you just have this little tail section and this long skinny body and the head. That might work too. You never know. And so those are things that you can customize with plastics, that I really think if you're not having a good time fishing plastics, just start tinkering with how that plastic looks, because like Emily said, this is a great example of that all around bait that you could bring out for panfish, and it can fish big, it can fish small. I guess
panfish, they're going to eat that.
Yes.
So fish
as is. It would eat it as is too.
Okay, but Chris has another good point. Can I buy a starter pack somewhere? And I should look into that, because I'm sure that somebody sells something like that. And about matching the weight of a lead head to a tail and a plastic. And I think, Chris, we will do a whole show on that. And it's funny that you say that, because I haven't even told you this. I've been thinking we should do a show coming up about the different plastic profiles that we use. So like twister tails versus jigging and all of that, and how we match up those heads, because sometimes you can use tungsten, sometimes you can use lead, and there's so many options in between, and it is honestly so customizable. I hate to say just try it, but ultimately it kind of comes down to that. So we'll show you a lot more, but the weight is what controls how fast your bait falls or how deep you're fishing, right? And then the plastic is all about that presentation. So we'll get more into that. I don't want to say next week. I guess I haven't got that far, but I feel like it's coming up this time of year. So it may very well be.
Next week,
I'll try to have some good examples. I'll bring in some baits and some jigs, and we'll mash it up here, and that'll be all kinds of fun.
I think next week we're talking with Matt Crawford. And so that would be a good, I think that would be a good topic maybe to talk to Matt about next week, because he's a very young angler. He does very well. He has some fresh ideas, and we got to talk with him a little bit, and he learned a little bit from us. We learned a little bit from him. We're excited to talk with him. And he's been busy, so I'm glad that I've yanked him out of his fishing boat so he could come talk with us next week. Anyway, so
he does seem to be fishing even more than we do. Yeah, guys.
Well, college just let out.
Yeah,
he's on summer break. I don't get summer break anymore. I get summer work now. Yeah. Okay. So I think, Chris, there are. I don't think that there's starter packs with Euro Tackle. I don't believe that they have one on their website. What I will say is I would just buy something in black and something in white. Just buy one pack of each in one. This Helgramite would be a really good profile.
Chris, we're just going
to
get into it, and then we'll get more into it that way too.
And and a good all around weight for panfish plastics is a 32nd of an ounce. It's going to maybe float a little slow for some of your instances, and it might float a little bit fast for some of your instances, but all around, I believe that a 1/32 on a bait that's between 1 inch and 2 inches is a very good starting point. And like I said, if you're new to plastics, black color, white color, 1/32 ounce jigs, and you'll catch something eventually. And then you can you can. That's
the hard part, is the eventually. People don't.
Well, yeah, but when I say eventually, we're talking about panfish. Like you can throw this into some shallow waters off docks and catch a million bluegills. As long as there's a million bluegills there, they're going to be probably little. I do that. I do that. we went to my parents at one time, and I was just casting, and they're like little tiny bluegills. But that's a thing.
It can
You're
be
just
fun.
catching fish. It's fun. But that's confidence, and that gives you time to experiment. That gives you time to work on cadences.
That's true.
It's just all of those types of things, getting you to learn your tackle with your feel, and then you can progressively learn into bigger stuff.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
good. Cool. So as far as your tackle, is there more to scroll down to? Oh my gosh, well, all kinds of plastics,
Yeah.
all kinds of jigs, all kinds of things. But I think some of this people are going to be able to explore kind of on their own.
Absolutely.
But if people have questions, oh my gosh, yeah. If people see, then we get into ice a little bit.
Well, no,
No, yeah,
spoons
you're
are
right.
good. That's a good late summer
Well,
one.
that's true. I just forget. I just always use it in winter. Should take my own advice.
But all of the, I'm assuming there's going to be a bunch of this stuff at the St. Croix appreciation event, customer appreciation event. We'll be at the table. You can sit and chat with us. I love talking. If you don't know,
and we're going to try to find
me.
a place to go fishing in the area. So if you know a nice little local lake around there, you hit us up.
The river is right there.
That's well, maybe we'll see.
Well, and we will try and get in touch with Troy. Hopefully he is doing okay. I'm kind of wondering myself. Hopefully his back's holding out, and so
we talked to him yesterday. He seemed pretty good.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
So I just we'll touch base with him, and we'll get him on in shortly, hopefully. Otherwise, what else we got to talk about tonight?
If we go on another subject, we're going to need a whole nother episode.
Yeah, that's true. We're at 40 minutes.
Yeah. So I guess with that, I don't know. We haven't been fishing in almost like a week and a half, and we've just been busy with family and all kinds of fun things going on. And I think a lot of people have that going on this time of the year. There's a lot of graduation parties and birthdays and all kinds of things that get celebrated. And so I guess the one thing that I can say is we urge you to keep, maybe a travel rod or something like that in your car, because it always seems like you go somewhere and you're like, well, not fishing today. And that's when the perfect opportunity seems to arise. And so, we do always like to have, we're talking about baits and things that can be multi-purpose. So keep a mental list of things that work multi-purpose for you, because keep some of those things in a little tiny tackle box. You don't want to pack the whole everything in the kitchen sink, right? Just pack just a few small things, some of your go-tos, some of your confidence baits in a tiny little kit that you can keep in your trunk or the back of your car, or whatever is out of the way, right? Because anytime that you don't think you're going to be able to get out is when the perfect opportunity will come. So be prepared for that. And I think that's something that we are working on as well. So I think we need to find some really good travel rods, but
yeah, we're still on the hunt. Well, and okay, so I do like a good rod, right? We have our JTs, and I love the JTs. They just don't make a travel rod yet. And so I can't fit the 7.6 rod in my Ford Focus. But there's some really good inexpensive options on Amazon. We have some goofy ones that like close up into little fish. We got a couple of like what we thought were decent ones, and they've worked out okay. The one busted a tip off, and then we fixed it. It works fine. But yeah, we're still looking for something that works for us. I really think that a multi-section rod, kind of like a fly rod, would be a lot better for us. Something that has its own case. But when you're thinking about packing a travel kit, like I said, 32nd ounce jigs, a couple slip bobbers, a bunch of slip knots, because not only do slip knots provide you with the setup for the bobber, you can also use it to dress the end of hooks. So like you can put it on a hook,
fray it out.
You can put it on a hook, fray it out, dress a hook. You can just tie up, you can tie up flies with them. You can do all kinds of stuff with those little knots. And so like put a bunch of those in there, have some beads. And like I said, just pick out a few of the plastics that you like. Otherwise, if you're just starting out, you're just getting into the whole plastic game, some white plastics, some black plastics, 1/32 ounce jigs, you'd be good to go.
and something chartreuse.
Okay, and something chartreuse.
Oh, you never know. I don't know. It's one of my confidence baits. It just always goes in. But I think one of the things as far as our plans for the weekend, we're going to try to hit the water. It's going to be, I think, rain gear this weekend because we have the weather report just looks worse from where I don't really want to tell you. But we're gonna get out there and we're gonna catch some fish and we're gonna see where they're at. And I'm interested in Watertown's what they are doing because at this point I'm not even totally sure. So I'm looking forward to checking all of that out and bringing all of that to you guys here next week. And other than that,
yeah,
that's it, I guess.
That's it.
Let us know how your fishing is and how things are going for you guys. Otherwise, we'll be here to talk about it next week and looking forward to that edition of the Night Bite.
Night, everybody.